be with you all, and I'm welcome from here, and I'm in very cold Iowa right now. It's very chilly here. I've moved here recently, and it's colder than it was when I was living in Kansas City. Watching everybody here and listening to everybody here this morning, I noticed something that, and I have to tell a story. Some of you have already heard before, probably heard this before, but I'm going to repeat it. My pleasure of meeting Mr. Tatri Raman for the first time was about 20 years ago almost now. I can't believe that. And I was on a visit to a school with Paul Millett, and we were sitting at breakfast, and in walks this gentleman. And he came in and joined us for breakfast, and we sat down and had a conversation. And one of the things he said during the conversation is that he has never worn a tie in his life. And as I saw everybody around today, I noticed there were very few ties. And I have to say, Dr., that I have joined you now. I am never going to wear a tie again unless my wife makes me.
Thank you for that.
But that is stuck in my mind. Is that first meeting that was before you took us to like 3 different schools to visit while we were there, and it's been a great pleasure to be able to be part of the SEAA and to know you for these past 20 years. I just wanted to say that beginning with. Mr. Rahman asked me to talk about the changing tech in business ed and where it's going. And I really am looking out into the future. Some of the stuff may be applicable now, but I think it's really the direction we're heading. The first thing I want to talk about, and it was touched on earlier in the panel discussion. The fact is, students are always going to be ahead in their understanding of technology than faculty. There may be some rare occasions where the faculty may have some better knowledge, but my experience and with using Moore's law about technology changing every 18 months, our young folks are going to be raised with this, and it's going to be in their system. They're going to be able to adapt much more quickly than we are. So taking that into consideration, the things I'm going to be saying are things that faculty might always feel like they're trying to catch up. They're always running to keep up with what's going on. And one of the things that, and this is something that I've been thinking about, but there was some framework put around it within the last month or so. With the Google changing their name to Meta, and with their goals that they've set out for what this metaverse is going to be, is going to affect how we teach in classrooms. Because as this metaverse has started to be adopted, and people get not just their avatars, but they get their beings represented in this extra verse, what a classroom is and will be is going to change. Right now we have our Zoom meetings, we have distance learning where we meet from a distance. But going forward, and it's probably a decade away before we get really entrenched into some of this, is we're going to be able to have classes where students will literally walk into the room, have a seat, sit and talk to the people around them as they're waiting for the professor to show and to begin the class. It's going to be a different experience. We're not going to be able to reach out and touch anybody, not that we do that now, but it's going to be a very similar feeling to the classroom. It's not going to feel that you're at a distance, that you're far away. It's going to be this understanding of this being much more closely tied to each other and more of that team building thing. So when you sit down as a team of 4 or 5 people to work on a project, you're going to feel like you're sitting at a table working on a project versus time delayed between here and there and everywhere, forgetting about daylight savings time in the United States and showing up a little late, those kind of things. Those things will happen more, and it'll feel more like you're in person, but you'll still be working at a distance. And I think that's the thing that either you love him or hate him, Zuckerman is aiming for it in this metaverse, is to make that possible, to have that reality feel, but still be able to have the convenience of sitting at home. Radically change how education is done, and not just education. And in the field of business is going to be radically different. So preparing students to be able to survive and thrive in that atmosphere, whether it's meeting somebody in the hallway outside the meeting, those kind of day-to-day things that we don't get to do when we're working at a distance now. The second area is one that's an old topic that's been talked about and fretted over for as long as I've been in education, and that's testing integrity. We've been always trying to figure out, how do we know that person's actually the person taking that exam or that quiz at a distance? One of the things that we have now, and I think the technology could be used pretty quickly, is the smartwatches. They can tell your temperature, they can tell your heartbeat, they can tell you everything. My hunch is that, and it's getting invasive, and we have to give permission for this invasiveness, even though it's already there. This knowledge is already out there. We just don't acknowledge it. But I think schools will be able to use biorhythms and metrics to be able to ensure that the person taking the exam from a distance is the person that they say they are. And I think that is not that far away. I actually saw I was reading an article about where it's not just a watch, but you can buy a ring now that you put on a finger and does the same thing. So it's coming. And my hunch is, just like mobile phones took over developing nations more quickly than developed nations, I think this technology will be used in the developing nations that have a hard time getting everywhere. But it takes an hour to get from the outskirts of Delhi to a classroom. It makes it much more open to more people to be able to do this at a distance, but having the institution understand that this is the person who's getting the education, not a group of people. So I think that's one of the things that's coming fairly soon. The other challenge that's going to be coming out is the changing role and the understanding of what the faculty are to do. Historically, faculty have been the expert. They have all the knowledge and all the information. Well, I was at a AMBA conference, I guess it's 10 years ago now, and in Prague, and there was a man speaking about said that, hey, all this knowledge is out there. People can get the knowledge. It's not the knowledge that we have to be able to deliver. It's how to be a professional in the field. And moving ahead, developing that ability to teach and engage professionals in the world of business. And how do you integrate? So the faculty is going to become more of a mentor, more of apprentice master type situation. That doesn't mean the faculty is not going to be teaching. They're going to have to validate this knowledge base. The delivery may be from some other sources, whether it's an open source coursework or however. It's not the facts. It's not the skills, the hard skills that they're going to be needing for the faculty. They have to validate it and they have to know it. But it's going to be, how do we work together to enhance our skills with each other? When we sit down in a classroom, how can we communicate the best way? And the faculty's got to be the one to teach that. How do we respect and mentor each other? The faculty has to teach that. It's those things that they call them soft skills. They call them whatever you want to call them. But it's the things that the faculty are going to have to do in the future, not necessarily tied to facts. You can validate those facts, but the delivery of that information is not going to be as important as how that information is used and how you teach the morality, how you teach the ethics of how that information is used and developed. As we all know, this big data, it can be used for good or bad. As I was talking about the meta universe earlier, it can be positive, but also can be used negatively. And it's the responsibility of the faculty in schools to help students understand the morality. I'm going to use that, hate to use that word, but it really comes down to morals and ethics. And that's going to be a more and more important aspect, I believe, of delivering business education. And those are just some really surface things. I could probably talk for a long time longer, but those are the three pieces I think that we need to think forward. And you all are in the best position to work on this because you're already thinking what's possible, and you have that possibility around you. What's the metaverse going to look like? How are we going to ensure that the students are our students? And then how as we as faculty are we going to be able to help mold these future generations? Any questions, I'd be happy to answer.